I will. How you guys going? Good, good. I'm a bit worried. I was coming here, I'm like, man, are they going to be able to understand my accent? So I'm gonna try and slow it down a little. Basically today, I'm here to share a series of stories with you. I'm lucky enough to be able to work in Sierra Leone in West Africa and also Uganda, working with girls who are some of the poorest on the entire planet. But before I get into the work we do, I thought I'd share with you guys a little bit about my story. So, I grew up in Melbourne, Australia. This is a photo of me with my two little sisters, Courtney and Brittany. And in many ways, I had what I would consider to be a pretty privileged upbringing. So I got to go to private schools, I went on overseas holidays most years, I had a nanny to take care of me. But then, on the other side of the coin, my childhood was actually pretty rough. And I grew up in a home affected by alcoholism, by domestic violence, by drug abuse. I was sexually abused as a little girl, and I almost lost my mum to a suicide attempt when I was 13. So as a little girl growing up in that environment, I spent a lot of time very, very afraid. And some of my earliest memories are of my two little sisters running into my room in the middle of the night, and all you could hear were like plates smashing on the ground and my parents just screaming abuse at each other. And it was kind of my job as the older sister to act like the protector. So I'd take them and we'd run behind this one couch in the living room and we'd kind of just all sit there huddled together in a little ball waiting for the storm to pass. So growing up in an environment like that has an impact. And by the time I got to high school, I'd made a decision that life sucked and the only way I was ever going to be happy was if I made a lot of money. And that became my quest in life from when I was very, very young. My role model was Paris Hilton, or Kim Kardashian, and I thought if I had the boobs and the bum and a handbag with a little puppy dog in it, I thought when I have all that, then I'm going to be happy. So I went to university and I was studying computer science, and I ended up dropping out after about 2 years because unfortunately being a poor university student wasn't really correlating with being Paris Hilton. And I thought there are faster ways for me to get rich. So I started a web design company with a friend of mine, Shane, who you can see in this photo. We were in our very early 20s. And we did pretty well in our first year. So I earned about $130,000, which back then, in my early 20s, that was like more money than I'd had in my entire life. And to celebrate that, I essentially followed exactly the same path as my parents. So I was drinking 5 nights a week, I was abusing drugs, and any time that I wasn't wasted, I was either shopping or working. And that was really the extent of my existence for a number of years. And I did that over and over and over again. And by the time I got to 23, I kind of stepped back and thought, okay, I'm going to have a bit of a look at this life that I've created. And I kind of felt like I was out there portraying this image of like this happy-go-lucky party girl. But on the inside, I was absolutely miserable and pretending that I wasn't. And I looked at all these different areas of my life and they just felt empty, they felt shallow, and I felt like there really wasn't much worth living for. And I knew in that moment that I needed to make some big, big changes. So a friend of mine had just come back from Sierra Leone in West Africa, and she was sharing really passionately about some of her experiences there. And I was like, oh my God, like that's it. That's what I have to do. I have to get on a plane. I need to get out of this country. And then maybe that's going to be the thing that fixes me. So it all happened very quickly. I raised a bit of money to go over there and volunteer for a month. And I stepped on the plane in Melbourne. We just won like the most livable city for like 5 years in a row, so yay. Australia being one of the most developed countries on the entire planet. And I stepped off the plane in Sierra Leone, which at that stage was literally the poorest country on the entire planet. It was at the very bottom of the development index. And have many of you guys seen that movie Blood Diamond with Leonardo DiCaprio? Yeah, we got a few. So that's Sierra Leone. And one of the reasons the country was so poor was because of a decade-long civil war that had gone on there. And it was probably most well known for its use of child soldiers. And they'd invade these villages, and as a form of torture, they used to ask the community members, do you want short sleeves or long sleeves? Do you want short pants or long pants? And then depending on the answer, the child soldiers would chop off their limbs in various points in their body. The idea being, if the person didn't have any hands, they wouldn't be able to vote. So I remember my first night driving through Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone, and just all along the side of the roads, there were people just missing limbs, begging because they had no other way to survive. And I knew then that this trip was going to be a massive, massive game changer. So I went about 8 hours drive from Freetown to a community called Kamakwi, and I started work on the primary school, which is what I was there to do. And I kind of had this vision that my time in Sierra Leone was going to be filled with rainbows and unicorns, and I was going to feel like I was making such a difference. But my first 2 weeks in Sierra Leone, I absolutely hated it. There was no running water, there was no food that I was used to, there was no electricity. I'd barely been camping before, My idea of hardship was like buying one thing at the store instead of two things. I had no idea, never experienced anything like it. On top of that, there was poverty like I'd never seen before. And I got about halfway through my trip and I decided, nah. There is no way I can stay here for another 2 weeks. It was like another 2 weeks in my own version of hell. So I made the decision to go home. And then one night, I was lying in bed, trying to sleep. It's like 35 degrees there, really humid. Oh, Fahrenheit, a lot. 100? 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm lying in my bed just sweating in a pool, you can't sleep there because it's so hot and there's no air conditioning or fans. And in the distance, I could hear this wailing noise. And it started really far away at first, and then it started to get closer and closer and closer until it sounded like there was someone crying hysterically outside of my bedroom window. So I got up and I walked out to the back of the house, and where we were staying, there was our house and then another house directly behind it. And I walked out onto the back porch and I could see three people sitting at the front of this house. And as I got closer, I could see that it was a woman who was crying hysterically. And as I got closer, I started to see why. Her back had been ripped and torn open with blood coming from her back, and her face had just been beaten black and blue, like someone had beaten the crap out of this woman. And so I turned to the neighbor, Sarah, and I asked, what happened to her? And she goes, well, she got into a fight with her husband, and her husband beat her. And me, being very young and very naive, my first reaction is, well, why doesn't she just leave him? And Sarah kind of stops and looks at me, and she's like, well, her husband's the doctor in this community, and she got married to him when she was very, very young. She's never been to school, and she has 3 children to look after. She relies on him entirely for all the money. So if she was going to leave, where's she going to go? She has to stay with him, or she risks her children starving to death. So she'll endure this so her children can have a better life. And even though I'm not a girl born in Sierra Leone, I started to draw some parallels between this woman sitting in front of me and what I'd grown up with at home. And I could see that the difference was that I always knew there was a way out. I knew I was going to leave home, I was going to go and get a job, and I was going to make something of myself because I'd had an education and because I'd gone to school. This woman sitting in front of me did not have that choice. So I resolved to do something about it. And I stuck out my final 2 weeks in Sierra Leone and then came back to Australia and founded OneGirl. We're an organisation dedicated to educating 1 million girls across Africa by 2020. And I wanted to learn everything I could about the issue. I heard stories of little girls who were 11, 12 years old getting sold to men in the name of marriage, men that are like 40 and 50 years old enough to be their dads. I heard stories of young girls selling themselves in brothels just trying to survive, trying to get enough money for food, or girls stuck in the cycle of poverty exposed to HIV and AIDS. And it just reaffirmed my belief that education can change absolutely everything. A few weeks ago, I was in Uganda, just got back to Australia a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking with some of our girls who are on scholarships, and the little girl I've got my arm around, her name's Flavia. And I was asking Flavia, I'm like, well, what's the hardest thing about not having an education in a country like Uganda? And she goes, well, here, already as a woman, you are almost worthless. If you don't have an education, you have no status, you have no value, you are worth absolutely nothing, you're not even a person. And I said, well, what's the best part of the fact that you can go to school now? And she kind of pauses, and she puts her hand on her heart, and she goes, well, now they see me as a human being. Because in the countries we work in, girls are seen as a commodity, as something to be bought and sold. And the truth is that education can change everything for them. So for every year that a girl stays in school, her income will increase by 10% year on year. With the money she earns when she graduates, she invests 90% of that money back into her family. An educated woman will ensure that her children are educated. She'll get married when she's ready, not when she's forced to. Her children will be healthier and are more likely to live past the age of 5 because she's been educated. They call this the girl effect. And I've been lucky enough to see the girl effect happen over and over and over again. So this is Ramatu, and when she was 11 years old, she was engaged to a man more than 3 times her age. We had a number of conversations with Ramatu's dad, and finally he started to see the importance of keeping his girls in school. So he did something very brave. He cancelled the marriage and allowed us to give Ramatu a full scholarship to go to school instead. And when we asked her what she wanted to be when she grows up, she says she wants to be a lawyer so she can fight for the rights of children all across Sierra Leone. Then there's Kariatu, who from the age of 8 years old became a slave. And her parents had died and she was sent to live with a woman who decided Kariatu was there to serve her, and that was it. So from the tender age of 8, she's working 16-hour days from morning till night serving this woman. She was found in a market by a school principal who asked why this young girl wasn't in school. And after hearing Kariatu's story, he approached us and asked her to give her a scholarship to go back. And now she's back in school. Her teacher says she's one of the brightest girls in her class. And this is Awa. She lost both of her parents during the war, and the woman she was sent to live with was incredibly cruel and used to beat her just non-stop. So she ran away when she was 11 years old. She survived by begging on the streets for food, but it got to a point where she was too hungry and pretty much starving. So she had to make a choice, and at 12 years old, she sold herself into a brothel so she could get enough money to buy food. Awa was in the brothel for 2 years, and she said it was one of the darkest moments of her entire life. Eventually, she was rescued by another woman in her community who saw how young Awa was to be working at this brothel. And after we heard her story, we gave her a full scholarship to go back to school, and now she has a new future. And I guess one of the biggest challenges that we face is how do you make people care about this stuff? We're talking about girls who are on the other side of the world. We're never going to meet them. We're never going to see them. How do we put girls' education at the forefront of something that people really care about? We know these issues are heavy, and we thought, what if we brought a little bit of fun to it? What if we could somehow take all this and make it into something that we can share about in a way that's fun and joyful and really gets people to care? So we came up with the idea of do it in a dress. And the idea is really simple. You do an activity wearing a girls' school uniform, and you raised some money to send girls to school. And we were like, okay, is this going to work? But we thought, come on, everyone knows that most men do harbour a secret desire to wear a dress. So we thought we'll probably be okay there. And then as girls, we love dressing up, so that might work as well. So we kept it really simple. You register online and you pick a challenge. You raise $300. You do your challenge in a school dress, and a girl gets educated. And I'll show you quickly what some people have gotten up to so far.
Everybody's free. Everybody's got to be free. Yeah. Did you hear that? This is the sound of freedom. Everybody's free. Everybody's got to be free. Yeah. Like a bird. This is the sound of freedom. Come again. Jump up, girl, move your body to the left. Jump up, move your body to the right. Your body can't stop you tonight. No girl look sweet like you tonight. Every man have them eyes on you. Girl, you coming on with me tonight, right? You better believe my words that a man will do you right. Everybody's free. Everybody's got to be free. Yeah. Did you hear that? This is the sound of freedom. Everybody's and the songs of freedom. Everybody's got to be free. Yeah. Feel free. This is the sound of freedom. Come on. Free. Everybody's got to be.
So this amazing campaign has spread across the world. We've had people from more than 15 countries participate, and over the last few years, we've raised just over $1 million for girls' projects in Sierra Leone and Uganda. We've had students at college doing bake sales in school dresses. Teachers, at one school they had a teacher-student swap day, because in Australia most students have to wear dresses. So the kids got to wear whatever they want, and all the teachers had to wear school uniforms as well. They also put on a fashion show where the male school principal said, if you guys raise $2,000, I will be the star of the fashion show. So the school principal walked down the runway in his school dress and heels. Very excited group of kids. So I guess just to kind of finish out, I know you guys today are going to hear from a bunch of amazing speakers, which is so cool, and hopefully you're going to walk away incredibly inspired. One of the things that I always get concerned about when I speak at conferences is that they can become this amazing kind of inspiration fest, and then people don't actually take action when they leave. And inspiration without action is a lost opportunity. And I know you guys would see some of the stuff going on in the world today. Like you would have seen the 300 girls in Nigeria who got kidnapped for going to school. Or the little girl Malala who got shot in the head on her school bus because she wanted to go to school. She was 14 years old. Like, it's insane to me that we still live in a world where stuff like that is possible. And we're lucky enough that we're in this room today, we're in a position where we can actually do something about it. So if anything that I've said has resonated with you, please come and see me at lunch. I'm carrying around a little red suitcase full of dresses and posters and postcards. So if you want to be someone who goes back to your community, who does it in a dress, you have to promise me you're going to raise at least $300 to educate a girl, then please come and see me, because the world needs you. We need you to take action, and we need you to care. Thank you so much.